The first time the library's security gate screamed, Mara thought it was her. A sharp, electronic wail cut through the quiet, heads lifted from tables. A toddler froze mid-whisper. Someone's pen scratched to a stop. And Mara, who had been tucked into the corner behind the tall biography shelves, knees drawn to her chest, hands wrapped around a heater vent-warmed cup of water, felt her whole body snap tight the way it did when a door slammed at home. Not home, she corrected herself, because home was the word people used for places that didn't make you flinch. The alarm stopped as suddenly as it started, leaving a stunned hush behind. Then came footsteps, fast, purposeful. Mara slid deeper into the shadows between shelves, breath shallow, her fingers finding the familiar spine of the book she always kept close. Not because she was reading it, she had read it 3 times already, but because the weight of it in her hand reminded her she was real, still here, still not gone. A voice carried from the front desk. "Sir," a woman said, calm but edged. "You can't go back there." Another voice, male, low, irritated. "I'm just looking for someone. She's a kid." Mara's stomach turned cold. Not him. Please, not him. She squeezed her eyes shut, forcing herself to listen like a hunter in a story, for details, for proof, for escape routes. The library had become her map over the last 2 weeks. She knew which stairwell door stuck, which restroom stall latch was loose, which window in the teen section didn't quite close all the way. She also knew which librarians watched the room the way night guards watched a museum. And she knew the sound of danger when it walked in wearing a mask of concern. "Describe her," the woman at the desk said. "If she's lost, we can make an announcement." A pause. Mara's pulse pounded in her ears. "Brown hair," the man said. "Small. Probably wearing some kind of hoodie. She might look tired." Tired, Mara thought bitterly. What a soft word for someone who's been running on adrenaline and vending machine crackers for days. The woman, Mara had learned her name was Ms. Holloway, didn't raise her voice. She never did. She was the sort of adult who made you feel like the room had rules again. "I can't make announcements for someone you can't name," Ms. Holloway said, "and I can't let you wander the building. We have children here." "I'm not dangerous," the man snapped. Mara pressed the book tighter to her chest until the corners dug into her skin. There was a second voice now, deeper, quieter. A security guard, maybe? "Sir, we can help you at the desk. Behind the stacks is staff only right now." Staff only right now. Good. Mara edged sideways, moving without sound, careful not to brush the books too hard. She had learned that the shelves could betray you. A single scrape was enough to make someone look up. She made it to the end of the aisle and peeked around. The main walkway between sections stretched out like a corridor in a maze. People were still pretending to read, but their eyes flicked, their bodies angled toward the front. The air had changed. That was one of the library's secrets. It felt like a soft place, but it wasn't unguarded. It was a public room full of quiet watchers, a sanctuary with rules. Mara turned and slipped through a narrow gap into the nonfiction rows. She kept her head down, hoodie shadowing her face, moving like a thought no one wanted to catch. She wasn't going back. Not to them, not to the yelling, not to the raised fist from him and the apologies from her that always came afterward, flat and useless as spilled soda. The library had become her answer after leaving Frankie's, her breath turning to smoke in the cold, her hands numb, her mind racing through every bad option. The library had lights. It had warmth. It had bathrooms and water fountains and chairs you could sit in for hours without anyone asking why. And best of all, It had a steady hum of normal. Normal, Mara had learned, sounded like pages turning softly. She ducked behind a row of travel guides, Italy, Greece, Japan, and crouched low. From here she could see the front of the building in slivers, the desk, the big windows, the entrance doors that whooshed open with a polite breath of air. The man was still there. He had his hands on the desk now, leaning in as if he could push the world into giving him what he wanted. Ms. Holloway stood like a lamp, steady, bright, not moving. Mara watched the man's face, and as he turned just enough, she saw it clearly. Not him. Not her stepfather with the heavy jaw and the smell of beer that clung to his words. Not the man with his too friendly grin that turned sharp when no one was looking. This man was older, clean-shaven, wearing a work jacket with a stitched logo. His expression wasn't rage. It was something else. Urgency? Mara's mind stuttered. Confusion was its own kind of danger. It made you hesitate. The man pointed toward the back of the library, toward Mara's section, toward her. "She comes here," he said. "I've seen her. I just want to talk to her." Mara's lungs locked. He had seen her? But who was he? The security guard stepped closer, a broad-shouldered man with a gentle face. He spoke quietly, but Mara could see the firmness in his posture. "Sir," the guard said, "you need to step back. If you have concern about a minor, you can give your information to staff. Otherwise," the man's jaw worked. "I don't have time for this." Mara watched him glance toward the stacks like he was measuring distances. And then he did something that made Mara's skin crawl. He smiled. It was a practice smile, the kind adults used to convince you everything was fine when it wasn't. "I'll wait outside," he said, voice suddenly softer. "Tell her I'm not angry. Tell her it's about the book." Mara's fingers tightened so hard around her own book that her knuckles whitened. About the book? The man stepped away from the desk and walked toward the doors. The security gates didn't scream this time. He slipped out into the sunlight like someone exiting a church after saying a prayer they don't mean. Ms. Holloway watched him go, her face unreadable. Then she turned and said something to the guard. The guard nodded and moved toward the hallway that led to the staff offices. Mara stayed crouched, heartbeat hammering. A part of her wanted to disappear deeper, to vanish into the rows and become nothing more than a rumor. But another part, small and stubborn, pressed against her fear. About the book. What book? Her book? The only thing she had that felt like hers? Mara's eyes dropped to the title pressed onto the worn cover of the paperback in her hands. The House of Maps. She had found it in the discarded cart on her first day here, the kind of book that looked like it had been loved hard. The story was about a girl who got lost in a city that rearranged itself, and how she learned to navigate by noticing tiny details, cracks in sidewalks, the angle of the sun, the habits of strangers. Mara had thought it was fiction, but lately it had felt like a manual. Her gaze flicked to the stacks around her. The library didn't just hold books, it held patterns. People came in and out like tides, the same faces at the same times, the same safe spots, the same blind corners. If someone had been watching her, they would have learned her patterns too. Mara's throat went tight. She forced herself to stand, moving slowly to avoid drawing attention. She didn't head for the teen section or the exit. She went the long way, circling through children's books, past the storytime rug with painted animals, past the computers where people clicked and scrolled with blank focus. She kept Ms. Holloway in sight as she approached the desk from the side, staying behind a display of new releases. Ms. Holloway looked up, and her eyes met Mara's. Not startled, not accusatory, just Aware. Mara swallowed. Ms. Holloway's gaze flicked subtly down at Mara's hands, at the worn paperback, then back to Mara's face. Ms. Holloway didn't wave or call out. She simply nodded once and said quietly, "Mara, can you come here for a moment?" Hearing her own name out loud felt like someone shining a flashlight on her hiding place. Mara's instinct screamed no, but her feet moved anyway, drawn by that calm voice like a rope in the dark. She stopped at the edge of the desk, keeping space between them. Ms. Holloway lowered her voice so it stayed inside the bubble of the counter. "Are you okay?" she asked. Mara hesitated. The wrong answer could make the library turn into another place that rejected her. The right answer could change everything, and that was terrifying too. "I'm fine," Mara lied, because lies were easier than consequences. Ms. Holloway didn't argue. She looked past Mara toward the doors where the man might still be outside. "He said he wants to talk to you," Ms. Holloway said. "He claimed it's about a book." Mara's grip tightened. "I don't know him," Mara said quickly. "I swear, I don't." "I believe you," Mrs. Holloway said, gentle but firm. "Here's what I need you to do. Come with me." Mara froze. "Where?" Ms. Holloway slid a key card from a lanyard around her neck. "Staff hallway. A safer place to talk." Safer. That word landed with weight. Mara glanced around. People's eyes were back on screens and pages, pretending the tension hadn't existed. The library was smoothing itself over again like water after a stone drops. Mara had learned that the world didn't pause for your fear. Ms. Holloway came out from behind the desk and walked with purpose. Not fast enough to alarm anyone, but not slow either. Mara followed, half a step behind, ready to bolt if the man appeared again. They passed through a door marked "Staff Only." The air changed. Less echo, more fluorescent hum. The hallway smelled faintly of paper and lemon cleaner. Ms. Holloway led Mara into a small office with a round table, 2 chairs, and a window that looked out onto the parking lot. Mara's eyes flicked to the glass immediately. Outside, near the benches under the tree, the man stood with his hands in his pockets, staring at the library entrance like he was waiting for a bus. Ms. Holloway closed the blinds with one swift motion. "There," she said. "Now we can talk." Mara's heart raced. She sat, but only halfway, perched like a bird ready to fly. Ms. Holloway sat opposite her and rested her hands on the table, palms down. "I'm going to ask you a few questions," she said. "You don't have to answer anything you don't want to, but I need to know how to keep you safe." That word safe, again. Mara stared at the table. The laminate surface had tiny scratches, the evidence of 1,000 other conversations, 1,000 other problems. "I'm not doing anything wrong," Mara said, her voice cracking despite her effort to keep it flat. "I know," Miss Holloway said. "Libraries are for everyone, including people who need somewhere warm." Mara's eyes snapped up. "You know?" Miss Holloway's expression softened. "Mara, you've been here every day for 2 weeks. You always sit near the vents when it's cold. You always choose corners with 2 exits. You always keep your bag in your lap. Those aren't habits of someone who's just reading for fun." Mara's throat tightened. "You watched me?" "I noticed," Ms. Holloway corrected. "There's a difference." Mara didn't know what to do with that. Adults noticed her at home, too. Noticed her as a problem, a burden, a target. But this felt different, like being seen by someone who wasn't looking for weakness. Ms. Holloway continued, "The man outside, his name is Mr. Pruitt. He works for the city. Maintenance. He said he found something that belongs to you. Mara's stomach dipped. What? Ms. Holloway reached into a folder on the table. Mara hadn't even noticed it, and slid out a piece of paper. It was folded in half. The paper looked familiar, like it had been torn from a notebook. Ms. Holloway didn't open it. She pushed it toward Mara. Mara's fingers hovered over it, then she snatched it up and quickly unfolded it. The handwriting was hers. If you find this, I'm sorry. Please don't call anyone. I'm okay. I just need to leave. Mara's vision blurred. She had written that note the first night she ran, tearing a page from her school notebook and leaving it under the kitchen sugar jar because it felt like the least cruel thing she could do. A breadcrumb. Proof she hadn't vanished into nothing. But how had he found it? Ms. Holloway watched Mara's face carefully. Do you recognize it? Mara swallowed hard. Yes. Mr. Pruitt says he found it near a storm drain 2 blocks from here, Ms. Holloway said. He claims it blew out of someone's trash can during pickup. He also says he's been trying to return it to the person who wrote it. Mara's hand shook. The note rustled like dry leaves. That doesn't make any sense, Mara whispered. Ms. Holloway held Mara's gaze. Mara, I need to ask you directly. Are you missing? Is someone looking for you? Mara's first instinct was to say no. No meant no paperwork. No meant no police. No meant no social workers and meetings and questions and being forced to explain things that she didn't even have words for. But the note existed now in someone else's hands. Her secret had sprouted legs. Mara's voice came out small. I left. Miss Holloway nodded as if she'd expected that answer. Were you hurt? Ms. Holloway asked. Mara flinched at the word. Hurt was a thing that happened in specific moments. What Mara had lived through was weather, a constant storm you learned to move inside of. It's not safe there, Mara said. Ms. Holloway's jaw tightened, not with anger, but with something like resolve. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you for telling me. Mara's eyes darted to the door. Ms. Holloway anticipated it. I'm not going to call anyone without telling you, she said. But here's the twist, Mara. Mr. Pruitt didn't bring that note here because he's kind. Mara's skin prickled. What do you mean? Ms. Holloway took a slow breath. I recognized him. Mara's pulse stumbled. I used to work in family services, Ms. Holloway said, voice careful. Years ago, before I worked here. Mr. Pruitt was on a case file I handled. Someone who showed up at shelters offering help to young people who had run away. He wasn't officially charged with anything, but he was a pattern. Mara's stomach dropped like an elevator. He's one of those men, Mara whispered. Ms. Holloway nodded. I don't want to scare you, but I won't lie. If he thinks you're alone and vulnerable, he's going to keep trying. Mara's hands went numb. The library, the one place that had felt like a shield, suddenly felt like a spotlight. I have to go, Mara said, pushing her chair back. Ms. Holloway held up a hand, not blocking, just asking for a pause. Wait, listen to me. You do not have to walk back out there by yourself. Mara's breath came fast. He'll follow me. Not if we handle it correctly, Ms. Holloway said. Mara stared at her, the edges of panic buzzing in her ears. Ms. Holloway leaned forward. The library has cameras. We have a security guard. We have procedures. And she paused, choosing her words. And I know a safe youth center that can take you in today. Warm bed, food, people who can help without throwing you back into the fire. Mara's throat burned. They'll call my... They'll follow the law, Ms. Holloway said honestly. But there are protections. There are options. And the most important thing is, you won't be alone. Alone. That word had been Mara's constant companion, sitting beside her like a shadow. Sometimes it felt like freedom. Sometimes it felt like a cliff edge. Outside, faintly, Mara heard the whoosh of the automatic doors opening and closing again. Time was moving. Mr. Pruitt could step back inside at any moment. Mara looked down at her book on the table, the one she'd carried like armor. The House of Maps. In the story, the girl survived by learning the city's rules, by seeing how it tried to trick her, and how to turn its own pathways into escape routes. Mara swallowed and forced herself to ask, "What do we do?" Ms. Holloway's shoulders relaxed slightly, as if that question was a small bridge forming. "First," Ms. Holloway said, "we keep you out of sight. You'll stay back here while I talk to security." Mara nodded, still shaking. "Second," Ms. Holloway continued, "I'm going to call the youth center and see if they have a spot. If they do, we can arrange transport so you don't have to walk out past him." Mara's mouth went dry. "Transport like police?" "No," Miss Holloway said quickly. "Not police unless you want that. There are outreach workers. They can come quietly." Mara exhaled a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. "And third," Ms. Holloway said, voice steady, "we document Mr. Pruitt. If he approaches you again, we report him. The library is not his hunting ground." The word hunting made Mara flinch, but it also sparked something else. Anger, sharp and sudden. Not here. Mara stared at Ms. Holloway, searching for the trap. But Ms. Holloway's face was open, real. "Why are you helping me?" Mara asked, because she couldn't stop herself. Ms. Holloway's eyes softened. "Because this building is full of stories," she said, "and I've read enough to know how some of them end when no one steps in." Mara's eyes stung. She blinked hard. Ms. Holloway stood. "Stay here," she said. "Lock the door behind me." Mara watched her go, watched the careful way she moved, calm, purposeful, like she had done this before, not as a librarian, but as someone who understood the shape of danger. Mara locked the office door with trembling hands and pressed her back to it. For a moment, she listened to her own breathing. Then she looked around the office, her eyes catching on a corkboard on the wall. There were flyers pinned up, community events, tutoring, job fairs. One flyer caught her attention. Free legal clinic, housing, family, youth rights. Another was teen safe space, drop-in hours. There were pathways here she hadn't seen, maps she hadn't known existed. Her gaze fell to the window blinds. A thin sliver of light peeked through where the blind didn't fully close. Mara stepped carefully and angled her eye to look outside. Mr. Pruitt was still there. But now he wasn't just waiting. He was looking around, scanning. And then Mara's blood went icy. He turned his head as if he'd felt her gaze and stared straight toward the office window. The blinds should have hidden her, but Mara backed away anyway, heart slamming against her ribs. She clutched her book tight and whispered, "No." A soft knock came at the door. Mara froze. Another knock. "Mara?" Ms. Holloway's voice came through, quiet and controlled. "It's me." Mara's hands fumbled with the lock. She opened the door just enough to see Ms. Holloway's face. Ms. Holloway slipped inside and closed it behind her. "He's coming back in," Ms. Holloway said without preamble. Mara felt the room tilt. "How do you know?" "Security saw him move toward the entrance," Ms. Holloway said. "And he asked a patron if they'd seen a girl with a book." Mara's stomach churned. Ms. Holloway reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. "The youth center has a spot," she said. "An outreach worker is 10 minutes away." 10 minutes sounded like a lifetime. "What if he finds me?" Mara whispered. Ms. Holloway didn't hesitate. "He won't." Mara stared at her. Ms. Holloway's eyes were fierce now, the calm surface giving way to something stronger. "The library has another exit," Ms. Holloway said. "A staff door that leads to the side lot. Security will escort you. And we are going to do one more thing." "What?" Mara asked, voice barely there. Ms. Holloway reached for Mara's worn paperback. Mara's reflex was immediate. She pulled it back, clutching it like a shield. Ms. Holloway paused. "May I?" she asked gently. Mara hesitated, then loosened her grip enough to let Ms. Holloway take it. Ms. Holloway flipped the book open, not to the first page, but somewhere in the middle. Mara's breath caught. Tucked between the pages was a small, folded strip of paper, something Mara hadn't put there. Ms. Holloway unfolded it carefully. Written in neat handwriting were 4 words. "I know you're here." Mara's skin went cold. "I know," Ms. Holloway said, her voice tight. She turned the paper over. On the back was a phone number, and beneath it, "Call me. I can help." Mara's vision narrowed. The room felt too small, too bright. "He put that in my book?" Mara whispered, horrified. Ms. Holloway nodded. "Likely when you left it unattended, even for a moment, or when you returned it to a shelf." Mara's mind flicked back through the days. The time she'd gone to the restroom and left the book on the table. The time she'd set it down while reaching for a dictionary. The time she'd nodded off, exhaustion pulling her under for just a few seconds. The library wasn't magic. It was safe, but it wasn't sealed. Mara's hand shook. "He's been close." "Yes," Ms. Holloway said. "But here's the other twist." Ms. Holloway's mouth tightened as she held up the note. "This paper? This is evidence. And the cameras in your usual section may have caught him approaching your table." Mara stared at her. "So, what? You're going to call the police?" Ms. Holloway's gaze was steady. "We're going to give you choices. The outreach worker can help you decide what you want to do next, but we're not going to pretend that this is nothing." Mara swallowed hard. Outside in the main building, voices rose. Someone calling for security, chairs scraping. "He's inside," Mara whispered. Ms. Holloway nodded. "Yes, and security is handling him at the front, which means right now is our window. Window, map, escape route." Ms. Holloway opened the office door a crack and peeked into the hallway. Then she motioned to Mara. "Keep your hood up," she said. "Stay close to me." Mara's legs felt weak, but she moved. Ms. Holloway walked briskly down the staff corridor. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright, too normal for what was happening. At the end of the hall, the security guard appeared, broad-shouldered, calm, like a wall that could move. "This way," he said quietly. They turned through a door Mara hadn't noticed before, the kind that blended into the beige walls. It opened onto a narrow service stairwell that smelled like dust and old paint. Mara's heart pounded as they descended. Above them, muffled through the ceiling, she heard the faint echo of raised voices. Mara's mind tried to paint the scene. Mr. Pruitt at the front desk, pretending to be concerned, pushing boundaries, smiling when he should be leaving. The thought made Mara's stomach twist, but it also sparked something fierce again. He had thought the library would be easy. He had thought she was alone. At the bottom of the stairs, the guard pushed open a door. Cold air kissed Mara's face. The side lot was empty except for a few parked cars and a dumpster with a faded city logo. The guard scanned the area. "Clear," he said. Ms. Holloway guided Mara to a spot behind a low brick wall near the edge of the lot, where a small patch of shrubs offered cover. From here, Mara could see the street without being easily seen from the entrance. They waited. Every second felt like it had teeth. Mara hugged her book to her chest, the paper note crumpled in her fist like a thorn. A white van pulled up quietly to the curb. No flashing lights, no sirens, just a vehicle that looked like any other. A woman stepped out, mid-30s, warm jacket, hair pulled back, her face alert but kind. She moved with purpose, like Ms. Holloway. She approached and crouched slightly to be on Mara's level. "Hi," the woman said softly. "I'm Lynn. I'm with Outreach. Ms. Holloway told me you might want a safe place to go." Mara stared at her, suspicious and desperate all at once. Lynn didn't rush. She didn't reach for Mara. She simply held out a granola bar like an offering. "You don't have to decide everything today," Lynn said. "But you don't have to stay out here in the cold either." Mara's throat tightened. She took the granola bar, hands shaking. And for the first time in days, she felt the strange, almost painful weight of possibility. Behind them, inside the library, a door slammed. Mara flinched. Ms. Holloway's voice stayed steady. "Security has him at the desk," she said. "They're asking him to leave. If he refuses, they'll escalate." Lynn nodded, eyes sharp. "We can also file a report with the library and your description," she told Mara gently. "You're not in trouble. He is." Mara swallowed, feeling something shift inside her, like a locked door finally cracking open. All this time, she had assumed adults were either dangerous or useless, but here were two of them standing like shields. Mara looked at Ms. Holloway, then at Lynn, then at the van. "What happens if I go with you?" Mara asked, voice small. Lynn answered honestly. "You'll get a meal, a shower if you want, a bed. Tomorrow we can talk about options. School, a counselor, legal help, and we can figure out what you need to stay safe." Safe again. Mara thought of the library's rows of books, thousands of stories, thousands of endings. She thought of her own note under the sugar jar, the desperate apology written by a girl who didn't know how to be anything but careful. She thought of the paper hidden in her book, "I know you're here." He had tried to turn her safe place into a trap, but traps only work when you didn't see them. Mara took a shaky breath. "I don't want to go back," she said. Lynn nodded once, as if that sentence was a key. "Okay," she said, "then you won't." Ms. Holloway's hand hovered near Mara's shoulder, not touching, just there in case Mara wanted it. Mara stood on unsteady legs and walked toward the van. As she climbed inside, she looked back once. The library's side wall was plain brick, no stained glass, no glowing sign that said sanctuary, and yet it had been one, not because it was perfect, because someone inside it had noticed. The van door slid shut with a soft, final click. Mara held her book in her lap like a promise and watched the library shrink in the window as they pulled away. For the first time since she had left that violent house, Mara let herself imagine something she hadn't dared to imagine before. A future where the map didn't end at the edge of fear. A future where her story didn't have to be only about running. And somewhere inside the library, behind the desk, Ms. Holloway would return to her work, stacking books, answering questions, protecting the quiet, keeping the doors open for the next kid who wandered in looking for warmth, keeping the lights on. If this story pulled you in, please hit like. It helps this video find the people who need it. And if you want more, true-to-life, suspenseful stories about survival, small acts of kindness, and finding a way out, tap subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And if you've ever felt alone in a hard situation, I'm really glad you're here. If you're a young person watching this and you're dealing with violence at home, feeling unsafe, or you've run away, you deserve support right now without judgment. In the US or Canada, you can call or text 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's free, confidential, and available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you're in immediate danger, please call 911 or your local emergency number. If you need help as a runaway or homeless youth, in the US, call 1-800-RUNAWAY. That's 1-800-786-2929, or chat with the National Runaway Safeline online. If you're outside the US, search Suicide Crisis Hotline plus your country, or ask a trusted adult, school counselor, or local clinic for the right number where you live. You don't have to handle this alone. Help is real, and you deserve to be safe.